All right, let's wrap up this division with the Steelers. And, I described the Steelers. I don't remember if we were on air yet or if it was before we went on the air. I described them as boring.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand by that unless you can convince me otherwise.
I don't have a compelling argument for that. I
remember your response to me saying that. You're like, well, Najee could bounce back. And I was like, that's not exciting.
No, right, exactly. That's definitely the main featured point of this offense is Najee, and it's not going to be exciting, but it's easy to forget because he was a first rounder last year, one of the biggest busts in fantasy. He had that Liz Frank injury right as the season was starting, which is a brutal injury. He was able to gut it out, but it definitely took a toll on his volume, took a toll on his efficiency, which already wasn't great. But just 2 years ago as a rookie, he was the running back 3 in fantasy. He saw over 400 total opportunities as a rookie. And already in camp, they're talking about how much faster he looks. He looks fully healthy finally. He shed some weight, best shape of his career. We always get those reports this time of the year. But just the fact, rather than just caring about the fact that he's slimmed down, I care about the fact that he's healthy and looking like he's regained that burst, if not taken that burst to another level, which is important to me. Because if he's fully healthy, I think we just start with him. We can get into the aerial pie, the team level. We'll do that real quick. So team level wise, I'm expecting this division's kind of all over the place in terms of going against historical trends. But if you look at this, the Steelers have never been this close in terms of run-pass ratio, 565 attempts, 5 for the pass, 522 for the rush. We can go down here at the team level. This would be a significant departure from a much pass-happier team historically. So when that pulls up, here it is. 65-35, 62-38. But then we saw last year, Matt Canada finally took over the offense, who I think is a complete and utter moron, but he wanted to run the ball more, and he started to, 54-46. And I think he leans into that even more this year. It'd be the first year in 3 seasons that they'd be under 600 pass attempts, but all they keep talking about is how they want to run the ball. They're making it no damn secret, and that's what they want to do this year. So I expect them they've always been above league average in terms of total plays. I expect that to continue to be the trend, just a big bump in rush attempts, a slight bump down there in total pass attempts. And that, of course, benefits Najee Harris, who at 60% of the work would get over 313 carries, and 60% of the work for a Mike Tomlin running back would actually be a significant downgrade from what he typically does. As you can see here, these 2 seasons, 2019 and 2020, were injuries for James Conner. He, before getting hurt, was seeing right alongside the 75 or so percent of the work. So 86, 79, 76, 75% was Najee Harris just 2 seasons ago. And James Conner would have been well above that level had he stayed healthy in either of those 2 seasons. So Mike Tomlin loves to ride his horses. It's made that one of the best positions to invest in all of fantasy. In fact, if you take out those injury-ruined Connor seasons, his last 6 starting running backs, so Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams for a season, and then James Conner when he actually stayed healthy, and then you also mix in Najee Harris's rookie year, they've averaged 24 opportunities per game, which is insane, 23 fantasy points per game, which is also insane. On average, a Tomlin-led running back like workhorse, his fantasy average points, those 23, would be the average running back 2.5 on any given season. None have finished with worse than 21.9 opportunities or 18.5 fantasy points per game. None have been lower than the running back 6 in fantasy. And when Najee was healthy, it was more of the same. He was less efficient than Bell. He was less efficient than D'Angelo Williams back in the day, if you remember him.
Yeah, of course.
You remember that Le'Veon Bell got hurt, and then bam, and then Le'Veon Bell doesn't play, and Connor comes in. It's just a role that's made for a workhorse. Connor himself, Tomlin's come out and said, I'm a featured runner kind of guy. I like to have one guy that the team rallies around. And Jaylen Warren, it looked really good last year. I like Jaylen Warren. He beat Najee Harris in pretty much any efficiency metric you want to look at. But I also know Mike Tomlin loves his workhorses. So typically this number should be 75%. If you do that, then this would be like 375 to 400 carries. That's not going to happen. But I think 300 plus carries with, back to around 70-ish targets. Remember, 90 as a rookie. That is all very viable with Najee Harris being healthy. Now, is that going to be all that exciting given how inefficient he is? 1,252 yards, 8 touchdowns on 40 yards a pop, 53 catches. I bet you he's going to be one of those guys like when the aggregate comes out and he's my running back like 6.
Yeah.
Like, he's falling around 3 and 4 right now. Yeah, if he just continues to get that workhorse role by Mike Tomlin, that history has always suggested he's going to do. And this does give a decent amount to Jaylen Warren. The early reports are Mike Tomlin's not going to be able to keep Jaylen Warren off the field, given how jacked he is and how hard he's hitting the hole when you don't have the pads on. Whatever. What's that matter? I don't know. He is good. I like Jaylen Warren. I think he's a good player. So even Najee could have this monster workload and still save some decent scraps, 170-ish touches for Jaylen Warren as well. And I think Jaylen Warren is so much more efficient, can do some decent damage. So he's another one of those, even more so than Jerome Ford, a ultimate handcuff with benefits. Really, really like Jaylen Warren. So at their prices, I do really like Najee Harris, late third, early fourth with this projection. I think he would blow that out of the water. And then Jaylen Warren goes around 140 to 150 range. A great investment there for the backfield. And I definitely think that's the biggest talking points, because the aerial pie, especially if it's as low as I'm projecting here with only 550 attempts, departure from Mike Tomlin, you can see it right here with Kenny Pickett. 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns. Not the healthiest aerial pie. I've seen a lot of reports, a lot of people out there projecting Pickett to be that next take the step and big fantasy breakout guy. And clearly I'm not buying into it. I don't mind Pickett. I think he has some decent moxie and I like the way he plays. But if they're going to be reining him in, which I don't think they have to, I don't think they should be, but they keep talking about how they want to run the ball, play into their defense. That's why the other thing I should have mentioned with Najee and Jaylen Warren, why I bumped up his efficiency a little bit, the line improvements they made this year cannot be overlooked. First round investment, big left tackle coming out of Georgia, wasn't it Derek Jones? It slipped my mind. Either way, absolute mauler beast. They took an Eagles starting guard, made him one of the highest paid guards of free agency. Big beast guy. They had a second round early investment last year. They've really, the way this line, similar to the Bengals, in the last 2 to 3 years, you can't overstate how big of a turnaround these guys could potentially have, which would be huge. Because Najee was just running into brick wall after brick wall his rookie year, while still finishing as the running back 3. So if he's leaned down and more efficient behind a better line and sees similar rookie year volume, I think he's going to be. I really like him in that late third, early fourth. But yeah, just kind of bones to.
I did not think that you were going to get me even borderline excited about Najee, and here I am, kind of like now thinking, maybe do I want to run this back with Najee?
Yeah,
I had some Najee stock last year, and it tanked.
Yeah. See, I think because I largely avoided Najee, I always went
Me too, and I still somehow ended up with him. Just like Leonard Fournette, who I had no intention of drafting, and he just ended up on like 2 of my 3 teams.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It was like I blacked out while I was drafting.
And then you just ended up with him somehow. Who even knows why?
Twice. Yeah. I was like, well, I won't do that again. And then I just all of a sudden had him again.
And then Najee's on your team. Yeah, so maybe you'd be a little less excited because I avoided him last year, so it was kind of easy to just put the blinders on and not look at the shit. I really do think it was injury ridden because by the end of last year, actually I think it was week 9 on, week 7, week 8, week 7. It was week 7. After that point on, Najee was the running back 5 in fantasy. He was a top 5 guy. He seemed to finally kind of be pushing through and feel better about the foot. And he was back to his top 5 status, even with lesser volume than what he had been getting as a rookie. So I think Najee is one of the better picks you can make.
I'm intrigued. Here I am.
Yeah. We started the other draft. I remember our last big best ball. We went St. Brown, Devontae Adams, if I'm not mistaken, at the 12-13 turn. We were right there at the bottom. I don't know if Najee fell to us or not, but nowadays, if I'd start with receiver, and I often do Christian Watson, Deebo Samuel, whoever it might be, round 3, then I'm getting Najee Harris, who I really think could be back to that first round levels. Then you're looking at the Cam Akers, the James Connors, and those round 7, 8 kind of turn. Dameon Pierce round 6. If Mixon somehow falls to you round 5, you can make some really good backfields even with a 3 wide receiver start because Najee Harris does have that top 5 ceiling in that range. I think he's definitely somebody I'm looking much, much harder at. And I think these projections are going to make me start going in even more after statting these out. But, just to wrap them up, there's not a whole ton that I love with this passing game. Clearly, I projected a pretty low aerial pie in terms of volume, in terms of overall production. I do think Diontae Johnson, the Tomlin ace, which is usually like that Antonio Brown kind of plays a lot of slot, moves it all over. Diontae's been doing a fairly admirable job of that. And you can even see how just beneficial that role has been. 29, 31, 23, 29, 27% target share. Like really, really gets peppered there. But man, was it ugly last year. He was one of the only players that did not benefit from Kenny Pickett coming in. And I'll just kind of read you some of those splits real quick. In 4 games with Mitch Trubisky, Diontae was averaging 15.6 points per game. In 13 games with Kenny Pickett, he averaged 9 points per game. Over 6.5 point drop in his fantasy points per game. And it wasn't even a volume drop. It was a little bit of a volume drop. He was actually, this is crazy. He was on pace for 183 targets, 10.75 per game with Mitch, down to 8 targets per game, 136 targets with Kenny Pickett, which still definitely a drop, but 136 targets is pretty good. He was so bad with those 136 target pace, 769 yard pace, no touchdowns scored. Actually, all season. He didn't score a single touchdown, but with either quarterback, in 13 games with Pickett, not a single touchdown scored there. So, yeah, of course, that'll bounce back, and his points will definitely take a decent spike up with even 4 or 5 touchdowns, which I think he will score historically in his career. He's not a huge guy. He's not a huge goal line threat, but, we can look real quick at, I imagine he's not as bad as that. Yeah, 8, 7, and 5, not bad at the goal line by any means. And I've always liked Diontae. I think he's a nice player. But for whatever reason, him and Pickett could not get on the same page. So even with 130 targets, even in this juicy role, I don't have him producing for all that much. In fact, I actually have George Pickens with less volume, 102 targets, certainly less catches, 60 catches, going for just about as many yards, 834. But I like that big body. I think, George Pickens, 6 touchdowns, very, very reasonable. A lot of the talk in early camp is he doesn't even know how good he is and what he's about to do this season because of how just monstrous he looks in year 2 and how much more comfortable he is. And Pickens just kind of has that dog factor. Like I really like George Pickens. So if any receiver is going to blow up here, I think it's Pickens and not Diontae Johnson. Diontae goes a little bit earlier in drafts. They go similar round, but Diontae at the top of 7, whereas Pickens goes towards the mid to late round 7. I like Pickens honestly, and certainly with the discount baked in. You don't give a shit about Allen Robinson or Des Fitzpatrick, even though, of course,
Allen Robinson. I love that he's now the wide receiver 3
in all the camp hype, dude. Crushing it in red zone drills.
Oh, have they been saying that? Have they been saying that?
Yes, of course they have.
Oh, they can go fuck off.
They really can, right? Sit on a fist, please. It's just horrible. Like, and this is going to be the year we finally get out on him, right? Like, after back-to-back years of him just pulling our pants down and making us look like complete douchebags, this is going to be the year he does end up taking over the big slot and regains his athleticism and goes for, the 1,113 touchdown Allen Robinson season.
That'll make me hate him even more.
Oh, I will fucking find him and spit on his face if that happens. I will find a way to spit on Allen Robinson's face if he crosses 1,000 yards. Book it right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then
we'll take a business trip.
Yeah, that'd be the last we'd see of the Wolf because he would pound my face in the ground beef. But hey, it'd be fun regardless. It'd be very cathartic. And then the last guy is Pat Freiermuth. I love Pat. I think he's a solid, just does it all, consistent, reliable. 570 to 650 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns. Solid. Will be that kind of. He averaged 9 points a game last year, and that was good for tight end 7. That kind of just tells you how bad the position is. I do think Darnell Washington, monster, 6'6", apparently using that big body and red zone deals coming in from Georgia. He's more of a blocker. They already said he's kind of like a second tackle along the line. So he's meant to be more of a run blocker. But that wouldn't shock me if, like, in goal line packages, Freiermuth subbed out and Darnell's at the end and they kind of run the play action stuff to him and the ceiling gets capped for Freiermuth touchdowns. I could see that, but maybe he also takes a step forward and run after the catch and just overall, he's a solid, just reliable guy, but he also goes right around David Njoku in that round, like 9-10 range. And that's where I like to take Daniel Jones in my quarterbacks, or there's still some good upside receivers that are often making their way into that range that it's just him. He doesn't project any better than the guys that are going 7 to 8 rounds later, not significantly enough to warrant that type of price gap. So to me, I don't have a lot of Freiermuth either. Those rounds like 9 to 10 tight ends with him and Njoku being in the same division. And part of this, you kind of just see, like, I had Gesicki again projected for similar stats to both these guys, and he goes 4 rounds, 5 rounds later. Sometimes doesn't even get drafted type of thing. So So yeah, I guess Najee Harris and then a bunch of unexciting pass catchers with maybe a huge breakout upside for George Pickens is kind of how I summarize it. I'm not buying the Diontae Johnson bounce back unless I start seeing some real like great rapport between him and Kenny Pickett and reports that these guys are really putting in the time and effort to. It seemed like Diontae Johnson just didn't like Pickett, and then they just kind of just continued to fall off and off and off on the same. They just could never get on the same page, and I haven't seen any reports that they've tried to mend it and get better. So, yeah, I don't know. A pretty unexciting team overall, but Najee, a great price at round 3-4 turn, and then Pickens, maybe some upside, but that's really it for me. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.